Time, prime time, right here on AM 1380 WYSH.
Welcome to Between the Lines. June is almost here. We're talking to people. We're getting things done. And I've been wanting to shift, whatever you say, to this show to younger people for a while. And we have Kelly Wandell, who's as a graduate student at the University of Tennessee and is in the political science world, in the policy world, in the programming world. What makes cities work? What makes governments work? Not so much red and blue, but more like let's stay in the black and not the red kind of thing. We're going to talk a little bit to Kelly. She's a native Anderson County, former volleyball player and basketball player at Clinton, and played basketball at Maryville for what, 9 years? How long were you with COVID and everything? You played 5 years.
Yeah, I played 5 years of basketball.
Extra eligibility and stuff. Y'all won didn't you win the title last year?
Well, 2021 we won the basketball, and then 2020. I won it in volleyball. Or 2019, I mean. It
just seemed like your poor father was on the road every weekend. He was going to Alabama, back up to Mississippi, over here. And I don't ever talk to your parents much, maybe once every 2 or 3 months, but I remember Facebook during that time and some other stuff. That was exciting times.
Yes, it was.
So you grew up in Claxton. Most people know your mother and father. We'll stay out of county politics, but we'll get wonderful people. No question. Your whole family is wonderful.
Thank you.
And how about the baby? Wasn't she just like your little sister? She was like just kind of like a brat. And then, I don't mean that the wrong way. I mean, she just would come in and out, bye, let's go to this. And then all of a sudden, that was 4 years old, and now she's going to the prom.
Yep. She had her freshman tryouts for volleyball today.
She's very athletic, isn't she?
Oh, yes. She's just like the rest of us.
Clinton High School? What do you think of the Clinton football program? What do you think of the new coach? And I mean, you got to be positive about it, but he's got a real chore to kind of, he's had to deal with Anderson County and Oak Ridge and some other stuff. I really like the guy.
I do too. He's a great guy.
I've had Oak Ridge coaches on Anderson County. I got to get a hold of him and get him in here to talk about, the mentality. We've had a few short conversations, but, E.T. having a stroke kind of slowed me down in the Clinton world because he was my conduit to everything over there. He called me up and everything. And E.T., we hope you're feeling better, and we love you. I'm a big fan of each. I'm a big fan of Clinton sports because I worked around that area for a while, and I think they got great facilities thanks to Joe Hollingsworth, and they've done a lot of great things. So you're a star athlete over there. I'll use that word if you don't want to use it. And then you go to Maryville College on scholarship. You go up there to play. Yeah. And you played both sports there.
I did.
We were talking that off the air that you basically won conference championships and did some things, and et cetera, et cetera. But at some point you decided to study political science.
Yes.
And I can tell you with a degree in that, you got to figure out a way to plug it into some money. That's not a great opportunity. Tell us what brought you that decision.
Well, I went to Maryville, and I was just going to be a physical therapist. That was
the thing. Yeah.
That was my goal. But then I remember I took a nutrition class, and we watched like Food Inc. and these documentaries that show you the really like bad side.
Bad side of?
The food industry. Regulations not being as regulated as it should be, that kind of stuff.
So you thought policy-wise that... Okay,
so I would call my dad, and I'd be like, we learned this in class, and why is that allowed? Why are they allowed to do this? Why are they... Yeah, and he was like, well... And so then I remember one day we were driving to Maryville. He was driving, and he was like, so what do you want to do, like, when you get out? And I was like, well, I think I want to do, like, athletic training or physical therapy. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, well, I think so. What do you think I should do? And he was like, well, I always thought you would be a lawyer. And I was like, really?
Well, that equates to a politician.
Yeah. And he was like, well, even when we talk about issues, you're always like, why are things like this? How can that change? That kind of stuff. And then it also happened to be the 2016 presidential election, which was a very hot topic.
It was very exciting in those days.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I think my dad is right, surprisingly.
I didn't say that, Tracy. Go ahead.
And so I switched over to political science, and I loved it. I started with like intro to American government, and then went through that public policy. At Maryville, you do all kinds of
Beautiful
politics.
campus.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I played summer basketball.
Yeah, but learned about international politics, comparative politics, just really like a good, like, comprehensive.
Define, so Maryville has a decent program.
Oh yeah.
Define comparative politics. Now, I took courses in graduate school. I know what it means, but explain it in simple terms for our viewers.
Yeah, so with comparative politics, you're not necessarily comparing countries, but you look at countries individually, and you don't want to find similarities between them, but you just want to look at them from like an more objective point of view.
But compare is a verb. At some point, there's
yeah.
got to be some action there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like with international, you really like put countries like head to head, like comparing which is better and everything. I feel like with our comparative classes, we just learned about each type of government, countries that have the different forms of government, that kind of stuff.
So we're going to get into that because that's something. I think that the two-party system's run its course. That's me as a political consultant or whatever you call me. I'm everything that's wrong with the system. I'm a spin guy. I'm an advertising guy. I'm a pollster. But I mean, but still, I think the party. You've either got to go black or red or blue. If you get somebody in there that's green and it goes 48, 38, 20, somebody's got to make a deal. Italian politics will be my best thing comparison to that. You see it all, most European, they have different interests in different things. Well, in the end, you can't just force or Israel, you can't just put your ideology in there and say everybody has to go this color because you don't have enough to form a Congress or a election. You understand what I'm saying? So basically, I don't know if the United States, we'll get to it, but I think the United States may be at a point where it's too polarized.
Yeah.
I think so. I think so. Of all the countries you studied, what was the most interesting?
Well, I did a gender quota. My senior thesis at Maryville was on gender quotas.
We're all normal people. We all eat beans and cornbread. What's gender quota?
Gender quota is like a statute that forces so many seats in a legislative, so like a Senate or a House, to be made up of women, or there's other that are on the ballots. Women have to make up so many seats or so many options on the ballot. So I studied those. So
to me, that's just, it's gender quotas, but quotas are not very popular.
No, they're not.
And at least in America, they're not, because it's like being entitled to something without earning it through the competitive process.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to have that. I mean, we had it to more normalized educational opportunities in the 60s and 70s. I mean, it can be overdone, but I mean, I think there's some validity to that. Who has gender quotas?
Uruguay has gender quotas.
Isn't that interesting? I wouldn't have figured Uruguay for that.
There's actually a lot of South American countries that have it. There are some African countries. I can't think right now. That's okay. That's been a few years since
I understand. Go ahead.
did that research. But there's a lot of those. And typically with those countries, they'll have women leaders in power, which I thought was interesting because they're doing to put women into seats of power, but they're also allowing and voting for a woman to hold the highest seat.
I have a lot of political clients every 2 to 4 years. You know that. And I've got clients now all over East Tennessee, and it's very interesting. Normally, well, first of all, women have to meet step criteria that men never have to meet. I mean, it's not as simple as Bubba and Jane, but it's more men running a pack. We could go into other types of education here and talk about wolves and all that kind of stuff. But it's very difficult to be accepted. But in the last 2 years, I have seen this, and with the Republicans even more than the Democrats. Democrats have been more open to that for decades. But I have seen Republicans go out and recruit woman after woman after woman, and Democrats are too. In Nashville, we have 2 male Democratic judges who are outstanding, been there for years, and 2 women beat them in the primaries, just knocked them off. So I'm seeing, whether you're conservative, liberal, somewhere in the middle, like most of us, I'm seeing massive amounts of, not massive is a bad word, that's especially when you're talking about women's gains, right?
Gosh.
You never want to use the word massive. Significant. We're seeing significant gains, right? And that's exciting. I don't, did you do anything with women's leadership versus men's leadership? Do they approach things differently?
Yes, one of my professors, her name was Frances Henderson. She's now at UK. But she did comparative politics, and she also taught gender and women's studies at Maryville. But when we would talk in her comparative classes about the leadership styles of men versus women, women would have more nurturing approaches. They would have more policies that were social welfare focused, really like a lot on like children and just the well-being of their citizens, rather than men who typically are more concerned with the security of their country and their relationships with other countries. Women were more focused inward, and like men would also be more likely to hit the red button to go to war versus women who kind of tried to, the research showed that they would try to talk things out and compromise in different ways.
Well, when I think of women leaders, I think of Margaret Thatcher early in Britain. And Germany has a woman chancellor now, does it not? I don't follow as much as you probably do. But there's some strong women leaders. And when you see the summits, the G7s and all that, there's a lot of women in charge in different countries. And I think it just depends on the background. But I guess what I'm getting at is people aren't afraid to vote for women anymore.
Which is good.
Yeah. See, 1921, the guys let that get away. Women got the right to vote, and there you go. 50 years later, it's all crazy.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. But I really, honestly, what do you think of communist managed countries? What'd you learn? China, Russia?
We really didn't. Well, I'm sure we did talk about that, but I can't really remember what all we really talked about. I know in one of my classes, it was contemporary world issues. Asia is really coming up, and they're gonna be. It will be interesting to see.
What does that mean, coming up?
They're getting a lot of power. If you look at just businesses within like our country versus other country, China and other like Asian countries, many of their top businesses are energy or something that's government ran. Whereas here, Walmart is like one of our biggest businesses. And that's because they're able to go.
You don't consider Amazon an American country or anything?
Oh, Amazon too, but like Walmart as a physical business, I guess. But yeah, but it's companies like that. I think there may be some like automobile manufacturers at the top. Yeah.
My son calls me up from high school, sophomore. You need to switch your stock from this to this. I said, are you studying any subjects over there? Every day is some stock.
Yeah.
But kids know technology.
Yeah, they do.
And you know, and Musk has become kind of a role model for kids and everybody, because he's just like, here's the guy who's progressive, wants to open up everything, but he switched and registered as a Republican because he hates the controls and the Senate. So it's not a red and blue, it's not black and white, Republicans and Democrats and conservatives, probably conservatives and a little bit different things. So it's different. I mean, we all get hung up on the social stuff, but really the economic stuff is very, very complicated, and I think that's it. Gentlemen, let's take a 2-minute break or whatever, and we'll come back and talk more with Kelly Wandell.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see.
D-E-P-R.
Mental illness doesn't show up on a scale.
Bipolar?
Sorting out a mental health concern takes professional diagnosis and treatment.
Anxiety. I thought so.
If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support.
What if one day you went to your secret hiding place and instead of what you came for, you found this? What would you do? The truth is, all drug use comes with risk. Before drugs take their toll on you and your family, know that there is help. You can quit. If you or someone you love is struggling with drug use, call 1-800-662-HELP for 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, or go to samhsa.gov/know-the-risks.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. Beware of telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you. Callers threatening you with arrest or other legal action and demanding money are not from us. If you receive a call like this, hang up. Do not provide them with any form of payment or information. Report the call at oig.ssa.gov.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. Before we go any further, a big development in Anderson County. Madison Lambert has turned 21 years old. And she is a great kid. Not much of a kid anymore. I knew her when she was 16 or 17. Played volleyball with you at Clinton.
Yes.
Lives in Claxton too. But we were just talking about that. I didn't know today's Madison's birthday. Unbelievable. 21 years old. Gosh, I'm getting old. So anyway, we were starting to talk about Eastern countries getting more power and I think of things from political terms, and you think of things from management terms, economic terms, as a policy person. And when you have a controlled environment, when you don't have to answer to anybody but the premier or the Politburo or communist controlled or any autocratic controlled countries have a big advantage, whether it be Korea or somewhere else. The ability of the Eastern cultures to save money, to be productive, to be team focused is incredible. And I don't know how long we come out of a colonial model where we got cheap labor and we made money and corporations made a lot of money, and not that's bad or good, and there's not a lot of good about it, but I mean we grew from it, we got bigger, we provided opportunities, we helped people, but now everybody's catching up. And I think India will and someday will overtake China.
Yeah.
I don't know. But if you had to pick one place to live in the world, where would you go? Can't take Canada, can't take this continent. You got to go down.
Yeah. I would choose, I don't know how.
For the political system, not for the people. Not because I like tall guys and blonde.
I was just going to.
I
was going to pick the most beautiful place I've been.
Okay.
But for political system, I would probably.
You don't leave everybody hanging. What's the most beautiful place you've ever been?
Croatia.
Isn't that an interesting choice? I have friends in Croatia. That country got torn up. And you talk about political system. Soviet Union.
Yeah.
For 60, 70 years. Before the Soviet Union did accomplish something. They got all these different cultures to work together towards the sickle in the iron or whatever, right or wrong. The minute they collapsed, everybody started killing each other again. Isn't that amazing? After 70 years, they just picked up the old ethnic clashes.
Yeah. In 2019, my volleyball team, Maryville's volleyball team, we went on a trip and we went to the Czech Republic.
I think I contribute.
Maybe
$100. Go ahead.
Slovenia.
It took a year to plan that.
Croatia. It did. And then we ended up in Italy. But when we were in the Czech Republic, we were in Prague, and it was really interesting because you can.
History in Prague.
The buildings you could see when it was under like communist rule versus the older buildings that were there before that, and then the newer buildings, because each of those have specific like styles to how they would do buildings. So it was interesting because you could just be like, oh, that's probably was built during the communist area.
Well, in the pre-communist era, you had a lot of religious type Baroque art and stuff of that nature, which was really interesting. Let's switch back to America for a second.
Okay.
I want to talk about medicine for people. As you know, I work in Republican circles, congressmen and other people, and travel and get to see things and talk about things. Medicine for children, medicine for other people, I've always said it's our weakest issue. That in the end, you talked about women. I mean, you talk about women leadership and their ability to nurture and get programs together and policies. And I always sit in the room when we were fighting over Obamacare and socialized medicine. And my sister is a provider, helped write the TennCare bill and everything, and is a conservative. But the problem is they didn't develop the system for the providers to make any money and to do well with it, so it collapsed, basically. In a lot of ways it did. But I thought it was interesting. And I remember sitting a group in a circle and saying, before we can argue this point, because, you know, somebody would take a football player that got on TennCare and make a big sample out of it. But the truth of the matter is it helped a lot of people. Still does. But the question is, the system, you're part of it, the policy, the systems, the structures, the tone of leadership. It never developed enough for me. I mean, it just didn't seem like people bought into it.
Yeah.
But I asked these guys, I think there was like 7 guys in the room, 6 are congressmen, 1's a businessman. We have to answer a question first. And that question is, what's wrong with everybody getting health care? That's the first question. Now, it may not work, and private medicine seems to work better, but our goal should still be the same. And that's how do you feel about medicine? And that's in your book. What do you think we should do?
I don't necessarily know what we should do, but I do. We talked about in one of my economics classes, it's called Economics of the Public Sector. So we focused on more about like how economy can drive policy change, or economics can drive policy change. But we would talk about medicine, and there are market failures that are happening.
And that's where we're at. What do you mean by market failure?
Market failures are when the market is just naturally not doing what it should be doing.
Can you think of an example?
Yeah, monopolies are an example of a market failure. There's negative externalities, which that means when you don't do something, it negatively affects me, even though
so you're talking about for us, some folks, collateral damage from out of the policy.
Yes,
all right.
yes. And there's also positive externalities. So, like, an example that I can think of right now, like with COVID, if I chose to wear a mask, you're benefiting from that if I'm wearing a mask. There's other things. Maybe.
We're not mask people around these days.
No. But I'm just like, if they did work or whatever, or it would keep you from.
It's a great example.
Yeah. That was the example that we talked about in class.
Any contagion, that's true.
Yeah, right. It doesn't have to just be COVID.
Or we get medicine, that creates the spread.
Or just like if I have the flu and I don't go out of my house, and that's going to be a positive externality because you're not going to get near me.
We could talk about COVID forever.
Oh, we don't have to.
But I'm going to talk for just a second and say, I have no problem with someone 81 years old requiring a mask. I was asked to be brought into the courtroom debate about 6 months ago. Should I mandate masks in my courtroom? I said, here's what I believe. I believe when people are mandated or required to go there and they have no elective choice, you have a right to mandate it for the older people that are there. If you want to come to this corner, you need to wear a mask. If you don't have to go to a UT football game. You don't have to go to America. So I never saw the benefit of that. I think it helps senior citizens. I have a positive, and you and I both know my wife's had impacts from it, and there's different situations, but it was a failure in the schools. It was horrible, Kelly. I mean, little kids even today are draw a family picture and they put masks on everybody. I mean, a 4-year-old's wearing a mask. They tore the thing. It was just horrible. I use the example of St. Mary's School where my son went, but he's in high school at this time. They used masks for 3 or 4 weeks or somewhat, and then they got it cleared out. And I may be off on the details, but the point is they had 1 case in a year, and they did it right, and they used proper social distancing. But I just don't know. I think the whole thing. Let me say this: I don't know if anybody could have handled it. nobody knew.
Yeah,
You know,
that's what I was going to say.
But the second side of it is I think Governor Lee did a decent job. He kind of balanced in the middle. I give him high grades on it. But some school systems are different than others, and Knoxville just took it too far, and other ones. But I don't know. I don't know. But that's another thing of government control. We're talking about the same thing. I mean, how much should government be involved? Now, again, we go back to ads and politics and stuff, but I'm not so sure. I know in some school systems, and I can't remember what it's called, the Better Good, or some policy in the Tennessee Constitution or something that says that you can give a child an immunization or you can give a child a drug without parental consent. See, you lose me at that point.
Yeah,
Not that some parents aren't irresponsible. I can't remember the name of it because it came up during COVID with vaccines, but different things in different situations. But I still think we have to come to common solutions policy-wise.
I agree.
You know, in World War II and other areas, which were definitely more conservative than today, people got in line, donated blood, gave shots. I think people will help if they have to. People just aren't good at being told what to do. You got to let them come to that decision. So Croatia's the most beautiful place. Where would you go and live? What government do you think you would like to?
Well, most of Europe, as we know, is pretty affected right now. So I probably would
Affected
say
in what sense?
from the war in Ukraine. There's just that ongoing issue. If that was not happening, I would probably choose Austria.
You picking the traditional ethnic countries. I mean, Austria's a beautiful place. And if you've never traveled Europe, Austria and Germany are so clean. I mean, they take that stuff. Of course, Germans are more, whereas you go to France and Italy, it's got more, in the street. It's not quite. It's a different kind of culture. Although very educated. French are very, they have a lot of quality. You've been to Europe? I mean, been to Ireland?
No, I haven't.
That's a beautiful place too. They have in England and different things. And that's another interesting form of government. Shannon, give us 2 more minutes on break here, and we'll be back to talk about some other national issues and what colleges are training their people to do.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
This is my husband, Alex Hussey. Alex is about 2 weeks away from coming home.
I was point man in foot patrol, and I stopped on the bomb. Lost my legs and my left hand in an explosion.
And he suffered a severe traumatic brain injury.
As America's veterans face challenges, DAV is there.
There are so many mountains to climb, and we do it together.
With the right support, more veterans can reach victories, great and small.
To watch Alex take on this mountain, that's what this is all about.
DAV provides a lifetime of support to veterans of every generation, helping more than 1 million veterans each year.
Alex has conquered this mountain. That's something he won't forget.
With the right support, there are no limits.
Look at that smile! You did it!
But there's more to be done and more victories to be won.
This has meant so much.
Thank you, DAV.
Alex Hussey, thank you for your service. Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
Always ready, always there. Visit NationalGuard.com to find out more.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
back with tomorrow's president, Kelly Wandell. We were talking about the shifts in politics. You know, we talked about, like, in the South, the tremendous. I'm a pro-life person. I advocate pro-life things. I'm not sure what that means. I think it means, for me, I have a hard time with the death penalty because, you know, 13% of them aren't guilty, and then you get these people, right, that you know need to be shot 12 times, and it gets harder. But overall, the system is wrong. You know, in the old days, you took them out back, you shot them, you made a mistake every once in a while. Now they go through years of grueling stuff, and I just think that whole system is a little bit weak. And I'm a very pro-life person, and I oppose abortion, but I think the dialogue is not honest on either side. I just think that I'm trying to point out again the polarization of cultures, that no matter what the gun rights, we had this horrible shooting in Texas, which is really nobody's fault. An unstable guy, he could buy some guns. Okay, everybody can. I mean, I don't blame anybody for that. That's just an unstable situation. It had very little to do with politics. And maybe in the modern world, like other countries in the world do it, maybe it's time to put security guards at schools. I don't know the answer. They are at some schools. In the cities, they got them. And I just think it's part of it. But I think my point of bringing all those current issues together is that we get further strung apart. And I don't know where that goes. I'm fairly confident that the Republicans will take back the House and maybe the Senate, probably the Senate. And people say to me, that's because of this and that's because of that. And I go into these teaching situations or consulting situations. I said, listen, in the end, very few people will be impacted by pro-life, pro-choice. Once in a lifetime, somebody in the family, maybe. No, very few people are going to be impacted by the death penalty, and very few people, but they pump gas every week. Gasoline, it's the economy, and it's going to be a crashing dive. And I think the Democrats, and we just talking about this, I made a mistake not opening up the oil fields, and I just think you got to do it. I mean, we can't. It's one thing. It's one thing to save, and we're going to talk access to voting here in a minute. But you know, I mean, you can't save everybody. You can't save the penguins and the rats and everybody. I mean, it just can't be done. I thought the pipeline was good, and I'm not an environmentalist, so it's easy for me to feel that way. But nothing about environmental protection seems wrong to me. I mean, I think protecting the environment's good, but everything weighs at a cost. You know, and you have to do what's best. And the citizens of this country, democracy, feel that $4 and $4.50 gas is excessive, and they won't tolerate it. It's too hard a cost of living. It's different, and the leaders on both sides aren't as impacted as the people. You know how it is. It's different. I think there's. Tell me about voting. You said during the break that you think that a lot of these issues will energize young people because it restricts their freedoms in certain areas, whether it be guns or whatever. You're saying all sides could be affected by it. I'm arguing they'll never come to the polls. I've never seen it. We were more active in the 70s. I mean, but we didn't have this all day.
Right.
My son doesn't come out of his room. I mean, all day long. And then he'll talk about stuff that he knows because he studied that stuff on his phone, but he doesn't come out. If I said, what is Britannica or World Book, he'd have no idea what encyclopedia is.
Yeah.
Tell me what we got to do to get young people to vote.
As we were talking about earlier, I think we've been raised to focus more on just presidential elections and who's our president, who's running that. And like I said earlier, Maryville, we talked about it, all politics is local. So that just means that really what matters and what impacts us is the people we're voting for on a local level. So your city officials, your county officials, but young people are more geared towards what is our president doing, who is our president, and what should the president be doing.
That's because they're conditioned by the media to think that way.
I agree. And we don't really, I feel like my age group also overlooks senators and House reps, and those are really the people that are carrying the load.
And even more specific than that, there's staffers and everybody that's in D.C. that work for them. They can't do all that work. That's what I'm saying. But
so I do think that my age group is more politically engaged, definitely on media. maybe not Facebook, but like Twitter and stuff like that, like it's constant because that's what we see all the time. There's always like an infographic or something that someone's sharing on different issues. It can be anything. So I don't know if that.
My wife, who obviously is a lot younger than me, 20 in different generation, one generation removed, they live on TikTok.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's like self-production of craziness. Mm-hmm. I look at it every day, or not every day, but a couple times a week to see what's on there. Some of the comedy's funny, but I mean, a lot of it's just, it ranges anywhere from indecent to irrelevant to some really good stuff, really good visuals and stuff.
Yeah.
How much is TikTok impacting young people?
I definitely think it's impacting us a lot, but it's also like any other media, it gives you what it thinks you want. So if I'm watching makeup videos or something like that, it's gonna put makeup videos on my For You page. But if you're more politically driven and you like to watch these TikToks,
so whatever I watch, the algorithms are going to feed me more of that.
Yes. Same with Facebook.
That must be pretty boring because it keeps feeding me boring things to watch. Go ahead.
Facebook is the same way. I read a study.
That's an old person's thing now, though, right?
Yeah.
No, nobody young watches. My son, nobody.
But I think there was a study or something one day that Facebook likes to put things that they know they're going to get an intense reaction from you. So typically like an angry reaction. And so they'll keep putting, like, the algorithm will feed you things that it knows you don't like, but just to get you engaged. So I don't know if that's true or not.
That's a good point, though.
But
I can see that.
Back to like my age group being
Roku or all this. Our show is in all of those formats, by the way. YouTube is still popular.
Yeah, pretty popular. I think TikTok has probably.
Instagram's fading, right?
Yeah, but people still use it a lot.
Snapchat, that went out the door a long time ago.
No, Snapchat is still used,
Gets more
but
people
it's
in
just
trouble. Gets more. I'm in the political world.
Mm-hmm.
More people get in trouble with Snapchat. They say, well, it disappears. Not if they take a picture of it.
I think Twitter is like the news feed for my age group.
Speed?
Yeah, like
feed. What'd you say?
News feed.
News feed. I got
it. Like if something happens, I get on Twitter and I see what tweets are coming in.
My wife does too.
So I think if people running for office could really rein in that and get those younger people who are looking at that could be a benefit. You never know.
Republicans are getting very active. I mean, strategies nationally, because I get to sit on some. They're really doing more Twitter stuff and more stuff to get it out. I mean, you see Blackburn and Haggerty and they're always out. We don't have a lot of Dems to compare in this East Tennessee, but they're sending out a lot of tweets and doing a lot of stuff, and it's really kind of interesting. I mean, how many accounts do you have? Twitter? Do you have one account?
Yeah, just one.
Some of these people have 3 and 4 accounts. I don't know how that works, but
yeah,
I get it. And I'm with Elon Musk. You don't kick people off of things. I mean, Donald Trump or Obama or anybody. Nobody should be kicked off unless they're cussing or doing different things. And I mean, you're inciting stuff. Well, that whole thing is nothing but incitements on all sides. So Musk is my man. He goes out and buys the whole company. He's upset with him. I mean, and that once again, we haven't talked about it yet, but money drives all this. Money drives it all.
It definitely does.
You see values in socialism? Be careful with your answers on tape forever.
I think.
I didn't say the system, but the positives of it. I do. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm not running for that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you could say that for anything. There's positives with any form. There's
efficiencies, but I'm not sure. Like dictatorships, there are great efficiencies, but I don't.
Some would believe that there are positives though to it. So I think it's really just kind of.
There's been some benevolent dictators.
I think what I recommend when it comes to like socialism, capitalism, communism, anything like that is just for people to like look it up. Like just do a little bit of digging. Don't just listen to what I'm saying on
but you know
air.
But listen to me. Here's the deal, and people don't look at this because it's part of the history background. Except for the Chinese, and that's true. Chinese, Indians. What else have we got here? Russians for the most part. a little more diversity. But all these countries have monotype cultures. I mean, they're all from the same culture. They run together. America's I hate to use the old phrase from my childhood, but melting pot of different kinds. I mean, we have different religions, we have different everybody, and freedom. And that freedom is costly because you get all kinds of people taking advantage of it. But I don't know. There's a lot to be said for freedom. And I think people all over the world, especially young people, are really big on freedom. They want to be able to do what they need to do, or what they want to do, et cetera, et cetera. What did the young people think about the economy? Can they get a feel for it? Opportunity? How's that? We'll talk opportunity.
I think there's a good amount of opportunity for our age group, especially like coming out of like college and getting jobs and everything. But then it's also like the specific position that I may want to hold may not be available to me. So I think our age group needs to be a little bit more flexible when it comes to that. But it will be interesting to see. But also, like for me, I've never bought a house. I've never really had to do any of these big.
Well, you're still in school.
Right. So for me, I can hear from everyone older than me that like this is outrageous and everything. But for me, it's just like, okay, this is.
But you can understand it on paper.
Oh yeah. But like it seems normal to me because I've not experienced anything else. So I think my age group probably is a little bit optimistic because we haven't been able to.
Haven't borne any cost yet?
Yeah. So we'll see.
It's interesting. You know, I had a friend who was the president of the steel company in Pittsburgh. And I used to tell him he had plants in Europe. I said, with all the heavy unionization and socialization, does it make it really hard for you? He goes, no, it's easy. They set how much we can charge. They set how much we pay the people, and they set our profits, and we just go. He said it's not the ideal system, but it's not a struggle like you would think sometimes with strikes and other things, et cetera, et cetera. Talking about I don't know, like maybe some of the French and the Nordic countries, but it was interesting because the different political systems operate differently. I don't know. I think we've talked about 3 or 4 things, but I think women ascending to power roles, it's coming. It's coming. And I don't know. Part of it is I don't know how most of the men hold on too long, and they stay in the business, and younger men don't get out until older men do. We've seen that and women come in and start working it, and they see opportunity. I think you'll see. I think Anderson County Commission will have 5 or 6 women, 4 or 5 women after this time, more than 2. Knoxville will be almost even. There's other places where it's happening. It's interesting though. We don't see a lot of. We have 1 or 2, but don't see a lot of mayors. Don't see a lot of power administrative types yet, but we see a lot of legislative types and judicial. We have 2. Is it 2? Yeah, 2 women judges in Anderson County, and I think that'll pick up and in the years to come. Every 8 years it takes a while, et cetera, et cetera. So America moves forward. We have elections, 2, 4, 6. What do you think of the election system? What do you think of the electoral system? Not counting Anderson County's election commission. How do you feel about it all? That's my head, not hers. And the workers there are great. I love Anderson County workers, but I don't get it all.
Yeah, I think the electoral system may need to have a program evaluation and see how beneficial it
but it's
is
state
actually.
To state more than federal, right?
I would say federal too.
Okay. And what does federal? I mean, we're in a mess right there. Look at Georgia. I mean, we're in a mess everywhere. I have people who I know were in Philadelphia to count votes in the presidential system, and they brought them in by the van loads. I don't know who they were marked for. I don't know what they did, but let's just say COVID messed it all up. And I think the states have done the right thing in going back. I mean, if you can't show a driver's license, you shouldn't be able to vote. I mean, that's just a little bit off the top. Who's the top? Bill Mayer. He's coming back the same way. He's saying, look, this is nuts. Some of it is, and we're getting too far out. Do you think that the progressive movement or the Democrat movement, do you think they've taken themselves too far out? I mean, in analyzing it politically? I mean, like, I lost them when they started wearing costumes and marching down Times Square. I can remember the day I switched from the Democratic Party. I was on the air and they canceled the St. Patrick's. I was in Pittsburgh, and I was doing something TV present, and I can remember it's 1988. It was a committee. They canceled 88 or 80. They canceled the St. Patrick's Day parade in Boston. I said that's it, because of all the alternative groups that wanted to come in there, and I had no problems with alternative groups. I just to be able to demand to do certain things. Just I had enough. Being American was enough for me, just to try to do the right thing. Did you get any feel for war and its economic impact when you were studying?
Not really, because I don't even know when I was at Maryville. I don't even remember the last war. I think we talked about wars that had happened in the Middle Eastern, North African countries, and the impacts there. But the impacts there are definitely not similar to an impact we would feel here, just due to being very vastly different government setups, I guess.
Yeah. What do you think about police and young people? How is it? When you watch it, Seattle, Minneapolis, what do you think? Because you sympathize a lot with people that age, because they're your, But at the same time, I mean, let's face it. I mean, the whole Minneapolis, death on film, watching him suffocate was traumatic for everybody. Not just liberals, but traumatic for everybody. People talk about race relations haven't come that far, but I think they have. I mean, I was alive in the 70s, and we all got along great. We were athletes. We traveled. We played. We laughed. We did everything. But access to different things has gotten much, much better. So I think the government's done a decent job in that area. I don't think it's a racial issue. That's easy for me to say. I'm white, but I mean, and I have tremendous numbers. Anybody in South Carolina, I identify with the African American community very strongly. But I think that, and there'll always be racial differences here, Croatia, everywhere, But I think that we've made some strides. I just don't know this police stuff really is different. I watch that Washington D.C. church burning and stuff. Why are people so upset? Why are these young people so upset?
I think it comes down to not feeling heard or not feeling like they're being taken seriously. I think just really any generation, it doesn't even have to just be my specific generation. Like, we look at younger people as if they don't know yet because they haven't experienced as much, which is totally correct. We have not experienced as much as like someone from an older generation. But I think it's still, for politics to work, for policies to work, we have to serve the people, all people, not just the boomers or millennials because they've experienced more. We also have to listen to these kids who are still in high school because we make policies for them, for elementary school kids. They can't vote, but our policies still affect them. So I think a lot of that was coming from not being heard and not just being able to talk and make a policy that would be beneficial for all. I don't think, for the most part, people just hate like police. I think there's big differences between what the younger generation wants from police and what police are doing currently. Not that either is right or wrong, but I do think there needs to be more discussion, more middle ground.
Job.
Yes, I would say so, yes.
I mean, I just have the utmost respect for law enforcement because it can't be easy, no matter what you do. You got to, the goal is to go home every night and safe to see your family, so they got to protect themselves. But the acceleration of violence, you're exactly right. I think there is a disconnect there. I think young people are feeling left out. And I'm going to tell you what I think changed the world. And I've studied it and I've looked at it because I do a lot of polling, so I have to get people's assessments, right? But the thing, I think everybody just kind of figured things were going a certain way for decades. And then the iPhone came, and then technology came. And if something happens on the streets of Birmingham, Alabama, we may all know about it in 15 minutes. That's scary overload. In my opinion, it's overload. It's scary. You just sit there and go like this all day, and you can't, you know, but you can't nail into a board. I mean, it's kind of. I just think we're overloaded technology-wise. You know.
I think that's something. Technology is never going to go away.
Nope.
So.
Nope.
People who get in office, who have just hold positions, need to be able to take the bull by the horns and use technology as an advantage in connecting all these different generations and finding that middle ground. Because if you go and ask someone, every election, I always share this survey where you go through and you choose like policy issues. Doesn't say anything about Democrat, Republican, any politician, nothing like that. It gives you the issues. And then it also will give you, at the end of it, it will tell you where you lean. And then it will show you politicians that are like you align with and that reasons why you may not align with this person and stuff like that. But I always like to share that because if you look at it, most people fall in the middle. Like you mentioned earlier, like we're super polarized right now. We're super.
Well, at least we're projected to be polarized. That's what you're trying to say.
Yes, right. And there are really extreme people on both sides. But if you just ask a normal Joe Blow citizen, they're probably more like they're gonna have. They may be leaning to the right. They may be leaning to the left. But for the most part.
That's what makes us interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important to realize that it's okay to be in the middle and to be more moderate instead of just forcing this, oh, you're a liberal, so you have to be this, and you're a Republican, so you have to be this.
Well, for people like me that are unconvinced, you know, we can get into a debate and the other side can point out good issues, and I can just say he hates guns, and it's all over. Or I can say, you know, he kills. I mean, it's gotten to the point where people are hung up, and maybe they have a right to be hung up. Maybe they have the right to choose, but they care about certain issues. I've always said, people don't vote because they don't trust the government. They don't feel a part of it. People don't listen to people because they don't want to hear what you have to say. And now that we've got technology, we know they're, full of hay. I mean, this is where it is. Money drives it. Money drives it. And the 2-year congressional cycle may have worked in 1776, but let me tell you, I work with several congressmen. And you get elected in November, you take a vacation in December, and you're out fundraising in February. It's a mess. It's a mess. But sometime we'll talk about it in another show, but the whole committee structure is pretty interesting, how they pass laws and what they do and how they get through. And, the Tennessee legislature has always been set up to kill bills. I mean, you can go in there, come up with a good idea, and they just table it away. Calendar committee can table it away. I just think an informed electorate might change things a little better. I just don't know. I'm against internet voting. What do you think?
It's very hard to secure.
That's right.
So
almost impossible.
It's
can't secure anything.
Yeah, anymore. So I don't really know. It'd be interesting to see how other countries vote and how they secure their elections. It would be interesting to also see, like, other countries, how young people vote. If not how they vote, like which side.
What process,
but, like if they go and vote. It would be interesting to see.
Take your 10 best friends. How many vote in local elections? 2? You have to.
Yeah. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, see, because you don't even talk about it. It's not a subject of discussion. You're talking about music, you're talking about this or whatever. Now, you're talking about Texas because it was so tragic and so graphic, but it rose to the level of interest. Because such a tragedy, like a flood or Ukraine and Russia. When there's that much tragedy, everybody looks at it really carefully. And Texas was just horrible.
It was.
I mean, little kids. I mean, just I can't even stomach it. I've seen it in different eras, and they say Obama, Trump. It's none of that. It's just a society that's not plugged in carefully. I mean, You know, everybody. I always say every community's not Norris. There's some real world. And Norris, you got to respect it. It's a beautiful place, community. Everybody knows everybody. I love Norris, and but there were a lot more like that 50 years ago. Now it's not so much like that. But I think kids, can feel disjointed and left out easier with technology than they did before. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know. What do you see happening?
With
every life, world politics, America.
With the world. I guess we'll see what happens.
You said something to me a couple of months ago when you first got back. You said maybe I should run for office, and you were joking, but you weren't joking. So
I was joking.
No, you're joking now. But I mean, you can't change things without picking up a baseball bat and hitting a home run, right? I mean, you got to get in the game. It's the same thing. And the more my point to everybody is, the more young people that are active and involved, the more young people will be involved. We'll follow it. I mean, we need more young people. I mean, I know there were some commissioners. Rodney Archer got in there at 21. Some other kids got in there young, and that got some people. I don't know how many people are interested. Josh Anderson was fairly young when he started. I mean, there's just opportunity, I think, for young people. I think they have a better understanding of technology and the challenges. If you look at what would you change about the tax situation? We got about 2-3 minutes.
Which tax situation?
That's a good question. That's a pretty broad stroke I took. Do you think people pay enough taxes or too much? Or we need more money to fund things.
Yeah, that's definitely.
I wouldn't recommend a gas tax, but
I think that would be a better question for an economist who can, because you can have.
But it doesn't matter. If the political system doesn't allow it, that's why I'm getting at that.
Yeah.
We can set up models that tell us what to do, and you'll have different economic models, but what are we going to be able to get away with? What are we going to be able to do?
Yeah.
There's so much money now. You buy a Tesla, 10 days later, you made $20,000. I mean, it's just amazing how much money is in soft money out there. It's just incredible.
Yeah. One of my classes, we talk about outcome budgeting. So that's city specific. That's you're budgeting for outcomes and the services and programs that benefit your people. And then at the end of the year, you look at the goals that are being met and how your community is being served.
That's good.
So instead of line item budgeting, which has been what most cities use, and that's just when you incrementally increase or just decide to cut something. So I think that could be a turn that we could take, and then that would be more beneficial because our money would be going to things that really serve a purpose rather than just raising taxes because we need more funding, if that makes sense.
We used to do referendums for this. We wanted 2 million, 3 million, whatever, $2 million. The one issue that had the best chance of passing, you know what it was on referendums? Building new schools. Everybody had kids. They were vested in the situation. Well, Kelly, you give me hope. Take some of those classmates and make a difference and do some things. Thank you for watching Between the Lines. We'll be back. Congressman Fleischman's coming on in a couple of weeks for 2 shows, and we really appreciate Kelly and her coming on. And go Vols.
Yes.
You can't say that, can you?
Yes,
Since the moment you were born, I've made 1,000 wishes. Wishes for your future in a world that's changing fast. Because no matter what you do in this life, what matters to me is that you keep doing.
The life of every child is precious. If you care for a child or teenager with a disability and have limited income and resources, they may qualify for monthly cash payments through the Supplemental Security Income Program, or SSI. Call Social Security at 1-800-772-1213 or visit ssa.gov/SSI-Kids to learn more. That's ssa.gov/SSI-Kids. Message produced by Social Security at U.S. taxpayer expense.
This is my husband, Alex Hussey. Alex is about 2 weeks away from coming home.
I was point man on foot patrol, and I stopped on the bomb. Lost my legs and my left hand in an explosion.
And he suffered a severe traumatic brain injury.
As America's veterans face challenges, DAV is there.
There are so many mountains to climb, and we do it together.
With the right support, more veterans can reach victories, great and small.
To watch Alex take on this mountain, that's what this is all about.
DAV provides a lifetime of support to veterans of every generation, helping more than 1 million veterans each year.
Alex has conquered this mountain. That's something he won't forget.
With the right support, there are no limits.
Look at that smile! You did it!
But there's more to be done and more victories to be won.
This has meant so much.
Thank you, DAV.
Alex Hussey, thank you for your service. Support more